Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. I had the chance to travel a few miles this past week, and while I was on the roads across the northern Corn Belt, I saw many combines out harvesting in both corn and soybean fields. What I did not see were any peanut harvesters, but I'm told 1,000 miles to the southeast they are, or will very well soon be getting ready to run. Joining us this week to talk about it is Eric Lee. He's a sales agronomist with Nutrien Ag Solutions, and he joins us now for Agronomy for Your Acres. Eric, thanks for talking with us.
Absolutely, Mike. Happy to be here.
Let's take a look. What factors are you watching here as peanut growers in Georgia prepare to get into harvest?
Really, the main thing right now is going to be a tropical storm or a tropical depression that's starting to form in the Gulf. That can really push us behind and cause some difficulties when it comes to harvest.
Absolutely. A lot of rain coming down all at once could be some trouble. Let's talk about trouble. Eric, have you had any pest or disease pressure down in Georgia for your growers this year?
We have. We've had a lot of disease this year. We've had a strange year as far as a wet to dry, and now we're somewhat wet again. So that can kind of breed a lot of disease. Two main diseases, white mold, that we suffered a lot during the dry and hot phase, and now we're kind of in a cool wet, and so we're starting to see a lot of leaf spot diseases.
Now, is there anything you can do at this point in the game to address that leaf spot, or do you just let it go to harvest?
Yeah, we can kind of hit the cruise button right now. We can spend the least amount of money with some cheap fungicides, but really we're just cruising to the end right now.
All right, well, let's think about that harvest challenges that could be coming up. Are there any specific issues that you're advising growers to be prepared for this harvest season?
Yeah, like I stated earlier, mainly just the tropical storm and tropical depression. That's going to be really the main issue we have going forward. So a lot of guys are scrambling right now that they've dug peanuts and they're sitting on top of the ground. So they're scrambling, trying to get those picked while they can, while we have some nice weather.
You know, and that makes sense. Eric, I'm not terribly familiar with peanut production. That field behind you, those look bright and green. Are they going to be headed for harvest shortly?
Yeah, actually, this field will probably be dug in the next 10 days. And once the peanuts are inverted, the peanuts are exposed to the elements, and the vines will go through a drying period before it goes through the peanut combine. And the peanuts and the vines are separated, and the vines are shot out the back of the harvester, and we can actually start to bale some of that peanut hay to feed cows later in the year.
All right. Now, Eric, I understand you've been working with that field that's behind you. Can you give us any more details? It's a pretty neat topic, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is actually a Dynagrow 913 peanut, first of its kind. So this is a production acre. So all of the seeds, all the harvesting that's done here will actually be used going into 25 for more production acres. So we're looking to ramp up the seed, and hopefully going into 26 we'll have plenty for everybody around.
That makes sense. Eric, any other advice for growers heading into that 2026 season?
Yeah, just kind of 2025, really, it's going to be an interesting year. We've got a lot of challenges on the farm and a lot of financial challenges. So just kind of cutting back where we can cut back, and really going to have to dive into our financials to figure out where we can, pick up a few dollars here and there.
It's all going to come down to those base hits, right? Getting little wins to keep in business. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. We appreciate your insight on the peanut industry there in Georgia.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That's Eric Lee, sales agronomist with Nutrien Ag Solutions, and you can learn more at nutrienagsolutions.com. Save instantly when you buy 2 or more eligible Firestone Ag tires during the Firestone Fall into Savings promotion now until October 31st. Visit firestoneag.com or contact your local certified ag dealer. We're talking markets this week with Jacob Burks, a partner at agmarket.net. Jacob, thanks for speaking with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Mike. Appreciate it.
Big news outside the world of agriculture this week as the Federal Reserve dropped interest rates by 0.5 percentage point. Jacob, what impact do you expect this to have on commodities or agriculture?
Well, commodities in general should benefit from an interest rate cut. The first thing that you think of is what is the interest rate cut for? An interest rate cut is to make sure that this economy is still stimulated. One thing that you have to look at, there's a lot of money pushed into these interest-bearing investments. And as you take the incentive to invest into those interest rate bearing investments, a lot of that money will loosen up and come into the commodity market. And as you saw when we started increasing interest rates back in 2022, a lot of that money left the commodity sector and went into different investments. So now you're seeing this rate cut come off. You hope and you expect to see some of that money come back into the commodity community.
Absolutely. It certainly seems as if it could change that narrative for that investable dollar. Jacob, speaking of the stories coming out of the ag community, harvest is moving on. You talk with clients across the country. What are you hearing on corn progress and corn yields?
Well, as normal, we've seen the harvest come north. And as we went through Illinois and Missouri, we really have to put our thoughts in check because we're seeing some extremely good numbers. I'm talking to farmers and producers, and we collaborate amongst our group, and we're seeing some record yields across most of Missouri, across a lot of Illinois. You're seeing these numbers come in 20, 30 bushels over. So I sometimes I have to make sure I call those areas in southern Indiana and some of the Kentucky areas that are having droughts to keep my mind focused that, hey, it's not extremely perfect everywhere. But we're hearing some really good numbers. I think that the USDA being 5 bushels over last year, 6 bushels over last year. I don't see right now what I'm hearing anything that would change my mind to that. I think some of these private reports that came out, I think are going to be pretty accurate as we go forward. And the combine's not going to last. Some of these kernels, did they feel as we went north in the heat and the dryness that we saw? So I think the combines will always be the answer. But I think as we're looking at the progress and how the pace that we're on too, the dry down. So there's a lot of advantages to this dry weather. We hope it just didn't hurt the finishing of the crop.
Absolutely, got to fill in all those kernels, all those pods. Let's talk exports. Jacob, I understand we seem to have a good story building, at least on the export front. Is there more good news to come?
I hope so. The biggest fear that I have right now is what could happen next week, and the fact that we're going to start putting some tariffs on China, and how does that roll around with the soybean interest that we've seen. I think the other thing that we see is the 10 to 15 day forecast for South America has a little bit of rain put in it. And it always makes me curious that some of those exports that were promised to us from China, if those start getting canceled, if there's less fear that South America is going to have a crop.
That's a really good point. Watch that moisture down in South America. Jacob, we've also got this cattle market continuing to roll. Cattle on feed report. What was the trade expecting to see from Friday's report?
There was an expectation of being probably the 4th report in a row of higher on-feed numbers. So we've continued to grow that. And the way we've grown that has been, mostly from the imports from, Mexico, from Canada. As Mexico's had a drought, we've seen a lot of their cattle imported into our feedlots. So the expectation is a wide range of placements. And I think, that was the number that everybody was focused on was where are we going to land as far as what was actually placed this last month. And I think that's the biggest question as packers are ramping up buying in the countryside right now, because margins have been pretty good. And so as long as that box beef can hold on, and hopefully this interest rate cut will steam some economy back into everybody wanting to eat that T-bone. And I feel like that would be, the thing to watch right now is what that box beef does on the retail side. Absolutely.
How does the consumer react with beef prices where they are? There's been a story to watch for a while. We'll continue to watch that tale unfold. Jacob Burks, partner at agmarket.net. Thank you for joining us this week.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
With so much of modern production agriculture built on precision technology, it can be easy to forget that technology hasn't always been with us. Max Armstrong recently had a chance to be part of a historical dedication marking a unique piece of ag's history.
It was 30 years ago, Mike. 30 years ago this year that the first patent for development of the combine yield monitor was registered. A few days ago, the inventors were honored in northern Illinois for their achievement with the placement of a historic marker not far from the city of DeKalb, Illinois.
We didn't intend to do something, earth-shaking or breakthrough. We were just trying to make our farms more efficient. That was our whole objective.
Dave Larson recalled for me how the government helped pave the way all those years ago for the innovations we now commonly use and take for granted by allowing for the first time reception of the satellite signals that permitted us to know precisely our location.
We realized that we were working on the mapping system, and we had an idea how you might measure yield in the field. And so we put some pieces in place and we measured flow, but it was when GPS became available and we realized that it could be accessible to somebody other than the military. And we sat there and dreamed about, boy, if we could take the position and the yield, it's the start of just a whole revolution in how you do things in the field.
Jim Stoddart was a Case IH executive back in the day, and he shared with us how they realized that the data coming from farm fields had such great potential to improve farming.
People were staring at these yield maps and not really sure what all the little dots and colors meant. But at least the way I always explained it was the beginning of taking these really big pieces of farm equipment that were getting bigger and bigger and putting microelectronic control systems on them so you could actually control and make sure the seed you were planting went in the ground, the fertilizer you were putting on, you were getting your money's worth, and finally you were able to measure it. But it all started with Steve and Dave. Again, it's just these couple guys, a lot of energy came into the group, and then we built an organization around it, and it was a great experience.
Co-inventor Steve Faber, also honored for his work on the Combine Yield Monitor, who, like Dave Larson, was the product of a northern Illinois farm, says there is more that can yet be done.
What are the characteristics going across the field? This shows up, particularly in wheat, that one part of the field will have a condition in wheat that's really great for pastries and things like that. In the same variety in another spot, the characteristics won't be conducive to that. And so there were some companies that started doing protein sensing and things like that and mapping it in addition to the to the yield. But I don't think that that's continued down that path completely.
And as for what this lean and quite mean farm economy could do to the inventiveness and creativity we've seen, such as that brought forward by these gentlemen 3 decades ago, I asked Steve Faber if farm incomes, depressed so low now, could have a chilling effect on the advances going forward.
I think in some instances it actually stimulates innovation because people are looking at it and say, well, this isn't working, what can we do?
An interesting observation by Steve Faber that these challenging times may in fact foster more advancement, bringing it out of the agriculture community and those who support it. Mike?
Thank you, Max, for filling us in. That is an important piece of Ag's history, and it will be interesting to see where these innovations developed today take us in 30 years.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg, I understand fall is coming to the Pacific Northwest. Yep. What does that mean for folks in that region?
Well, we'll clock into it astronomically over the course of the weekend, and it's pretty much par for the course. A seasonal weather pattern had some significant moisture over the past 10 days to 2 weeks in some areas, but it's a little more of a flat west to east jet stream pattern here. So warmth weather into the Willamette Valley, Rogue River Basin, some heat into the Great Basin and points south and southeast from there, and a little bit of that into the areas of the Central Plain states, and a wide range of temperatures across the Canadian Prairie and in through the Dakotas. Boy, last week, multi-inch rains over parts of Montana, the western Dakotas. That will certainly help out with pasture lands and fields going forward here in the days and weeks to come. The next weather system dashes on by fairly quickly in this fairly broad west to east upper wind pattern, so some slightly cooler air into Washington state. The heat will temporarily build back across the Black Hills and points on southward, and some cool air laying out across the Canadian Prairie. No sign of any supercharged cold air coming southward or Pacific storminess. We've got a logjam of tropical systems way off to the east across the Atlantic, so things basically from the Missouri River on westward expected to slowly make their way eastward but come to a screeching halt points on to the east. No big headlines across the southwestern parts of the country, with the exception, mind you, of still some ongoing fires out there, but hopefully these weather systems up aloft there in the Pacific Northwest have eased and improved containment operations out there, but some pretty healthy irrigation demands out across areas of the central and southern valley reaches of California. Same with cotton irrigated variety across Arizona. Probably some early harvest expected to get going going there. Some cooler air in through the parts of the Central Plains temporarily. Some heat into areas of Oklahoma on southward through West Texas. And overall, pretty uneventful weather patterns. Seasonal heat across California, the southwest. A couple of monsoon shower and thunderstorm outbreaks, hit and miss, but that's winding down. And the heat running from about Kansas on southward into Oklahoma and Texas. Need more rain in the plains, central and southern areas, especially, Mike, for newly sown winter wheat fields.
That said, Corn Belt growers would like to see harvest get started without any additional moisture. Greg, what are you watching in the northern part of the Corn Belt?
Well, at least the southern areas of the Corn Belt have made good progress. In reports, we've had some pretty good roll of the combines into central areas of the Corn Belt, east central Illinois, parts of western Indiana. But that will probably change what will have come off a significant rain event of an inch or two into the northern and western Corn Belt parts of the plains. Yes, some harvest delays, but we're always juggling that with soil moisture. And I tell you, the drought map was just horrible looking last week in a wide area of the plains and Corn Belt. But some warmth and showers and thunderstorms across parts of the eastern Corn Belt. Very little significant move on this frontal boundary. The trough is still back to the west with moisture across Michigan, parts of Illinois, Indiana, and especially Ohio. Yeah, I know across the Buckeye State, where was this rain months ago? But note the slower movement of these weather systems now as they hit the Mississippi and points on to the east. Same will apply to parts of the southern plains. Some heat and some slightly cooler air settling on southward. The heat through West Texas cotton, leftover shower and thunderstorm in the monsoon setup across Arizona. Warmth and humidity across the Gulf Coast. Heads up here as we get to the middle and late portions of the week. This will turn out to be a significant tropical cyclone somewhere around New Orleans, east to maybe Tampa and up the Appalachian Trail. So, Mike, it is ramping up across the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic Basin. That means things come to a screeching halt for areas from the Mississippi on east.
Does that mean any drought relief for those folks in the mid-Atlantic?
They did get some last week from the remnants of Francine that stuck around for a couple of weeks on the maps and charts, but boy, horrible drought conditions from Ohio back in the mid-Atlantic region. Canadian high pressure here. The warmth will breed some showers and thunderstorms, settling the dust and slowing the combines a bit over the eastern Corn Belt. Same into the late portions of the week, and a quiet weather picture for now, mid-Atlantic region into the northeast and New England. And as we get into the early parts of next week, from about this boundary on southward, developing tropical systems into the southwest Caribbean. Warmth and humidity, showers and thunderstorms across the Gulf Coast back into parts of Texas as well. This will be a significant major tropical cyclone somewhere in the northeastern Gulf and a move northward across the Appalachians as we move on through the late portions of the week. Watch for flash flooding and high wind and damage.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Well, folks, at the Farm Progress Show in Boone this year, the field demonstrations were a sight to behold. Matt Youngman, the national events director for the show, told me at one time they had 14 combines out in the field demonstration area between combine manufacturers and header manufacturers. One of the header manufacturers on hand was Geringhoff. They unveiled their new XFR header for combines.
The XFR is our new launch into the Draper line. It means Extreme Flex Razor, and the technical name is XFR 50 because it is 50 feet. And this is kind of our bigger brother to the TrueFlex Razor line that we've had out since 2016. In that line, we're still offering that in a 35, a 40, and a 45 foot. But we found that the next step is bigger, and so we've come with this XFR 50. It's on a new platform and has some new features that the TFRs perhaps don't have at the moment. So.
Well, let's walk through some of those. What are some of the new features you're excited about on that XFR?
So, well, we have more flex, about 45% more flex even than the previous models. And the previous model, TFRs, were as flexible as any in the industry. So, we have the widest center section in the industry in terms of the center belt. We have a floating auger in the center, which flexes or floats approximately 2 inches if it needs to, if you get that big slug or something coming in and high yielding wheat and things like that. So we just have a ton of flex. We've improved our air system, which is an integrated air system that is constantly blowing air onto the belt to keep those seeds up there and get as much grain into your tank as we can. So we've added some new creature features kind of with some better lighting, some lights in the belt area and some stubble lights and lights on the ends. So good things like that.
It always helps so you can see what you're doing out there in the field.
Sure.
Now you mentioned the TrueFlex, a little smaller size than the XFR. Are there any other big differences between the two, or is size mainly the big one?
Size is going to be the biggest. There will be some differences in the air system and the overall look of the machine, but they both will do very well depending on the situation, the combine you want them on. But these 50s, and eventually if we work to 55 or 60, they're made to match the high capacity class 9 and 10 combines. The one here at the show is mounted on a John Deere X9 and is a good match for that.
How does the XFR work to feed those huge capacity new combines?
Yeah. We've got a 3-section reel. So that helps, and with the 3 sections that flex, we can maintain a better reel to cutter bar distance all the way across the machine. So that helps some, but also with having the wider center belt and the floating auger, it can just keep things flowing in that direction.
It's all about getting that massive amount of crop into
Right.
that center and then into
Right.
the machine.
Right.
If we've got folks who want to learn more about the products Geringhoff has on offer, where would you send them?
Probably the easiest place is go to geringhoff.com. Yeah, we've got a dealer locator on there. We have about 500 locations across the U.S. That can service you, and also we have our territory managers' names and phone numbers listed there. If you can't find a dealer in your neighborhood, give them a call and they'll help hook you up.
Well, our thanks to Craig Lee from Geringhoff for filling us in. It's fascinating for me to watch this technology and this equipment continue to grow in size and scale. Times keep moving forward. And earlier in the program, Max showed us the history of the yield monitor being traced back to a northern Illinois farm. Next, we're going to talk with Kim Daisy about how that technology is moving into the future. She's with GPX Intelligence. They're a company working to bring the internet to devices around the farm. She filled us in on what they do at GPX Intelligence.
We offer a variety of technologies, GPS and BLE tracking that provide an increased visibility across the equipment that it's managed, the process and operations in an agribusiness or on a farm. We work with some of the largest growers in the country, and they're using our technology and our database, like our platform, to increase their yield.
Okay.
So by doing things faster and better and with more information, and when things are tracked, they generally get better. So
right.
that really helps improve the output that any business is providing.
I've been told you can't effectively change anything unless you're measuring what you're doing already, because you don't know what you're changing unless you know what
Right.
you're doing.
Exactly.
So you've got the Internet of Things, these tools on the farms collecting data,
Yep.
bringing back to the grower the interesting facts happening on their operation. Now, Kim, what does the grower need to do to capitalize on this data? What does that management look like at the farm level of all this stuff that's coming in from the field?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty easy through our platform. Really, it's a very, very low lift, so to speak, in terms of infrastructure. We have tracking tools and technology that, depending on the application, can be as simple as magneting or zip tying onto a piece of like a widget, a crate, a harvest crate, a piece of machinery, a piece of tillage. Doesn't matter if it's powered or not powered. We can still track it. So if it's moving, we can give you better insights and better data to make change and to increase yields and increase your bottom line, essentially.
Now, Kim went on to mention that for farmers producing for the retail or for consumer markets directly, a lot of the tracking products from GPX could be very useful in meeting regulations and requirements. You can learn more at gpx.co. Thanks to Kim for that conversation. And folks, stay with us. When This Week in Agribusiness returns, we'll go to Illinois with Max Armstrong for another in our series of Plant Smart, Grow Smart. Leave it here.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. For this week's Plant Smart, Grow Smart from our friends at BASF, Max Armstrong traveled to northern Illinois. The combines might be rolling in the soybeans soon, but Max wanted to take a look at those Xitavo beans growing on the Jacobs farm. He's got that story for us now.
Are you an early soybean planter?
You know, I look at the opportunity. If the weather's fit, the ground's fit, I'm going to plant. You know, as far as the calendar, if the calendar's too far early, I won't do that. But no, I don't have a problem going early as far as that goes.
How do you go about evaluating something that you want to try for the first time, Ted?
So what I'll do is I'll do some research, of course.
Are you a leading edge, bleeding edge kind of guy where you say, you know, this may not be tried and proven, but let's try it?
Anything new and exciting, if I think the return on investment is there, I will look into it and try it.
Sounds like you used Xitavo soybean seed this past year. How did the varieties perform for you?
So they look very promising. Talking with my BASF rep, Dusty, he between him and Tim, they started talking about, so they went to the farm, they got the soil types, they picked the variety, they made the prescription planning for me.
Talk about it. What is it? What do you see when you look out there?
Oh, you drive by there, it looks like a picture perfect field. You know, I mean, it's nice height, they're standing good, they got a good color. You know, and anymore, beans don't have to be planted real thick to yield, as we're finding out, but they're just filled out very nicely, you know, as far as that goes. They look as good as any bean out there, and just because of all the new stuff coming down the pipe with them, I'm excited. I might expand my acres next year to a few more Xitavo beans.
Well, let's talk about the partnership with BASF. Tell us about your relationship with the local team here.
I get firsthand treatment. The group that I work with, very knowledgeable. I got their phone numbers. I can call them on anything.
Thank you, Max. And folks, you can see the full Plan Smart, Grow Smart series online at plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Greg, earlier in the program, you mentioned next week's precipitation chances. Give us some more detail. Who's going to see it and when?
Kind of a winding down of some of the stuff that got going mid to late next week across the Dakotas and the plains into the western Corn Belt over the past, at least ongoing weekend time frame. And as we get into early next week, still some ongoing moisture for the upper Midwest, late in the week towards the areas of the Ohio Valley. But some spots, an inch or two, probably some harvest delays, but we're always juggling harvest versus getting soil moisture back in the ground. And boy, we need it over a wide area of the heartland. Meanwhile, scattered in the Pacific Northwest, a couple of showers and thunderstorms in the southwest. This is the headline story. The Appalachians and points to the north and the east with one probably major tropical system somewhere from about New Orleans and the Delta to Tampa and a run up the Appalachians. Already had a foot of rain, by the way, last week in parts of the eastern Carolinas, and another one down here is probably scheduled for about the 1st to the 3rd of October into the western and central Gulf. So as we talked about, Mike, the tropics getting very busy and active, but that can be of benefit to the heartland, the plains of the Corn Belt with optimum harvest weather.
Well, let's talk temperature, Greg. What are you watching for that first week in October?
Just like we had with Beryl early on in the summertime season, sometimes when those systems come barreling their way out of the eastern Gulf up the Appalachian Trail, we tap into the northern branch of the jet and bring down some cooler, drier air. That will be the case here. No frost or freeze, just an easing of temperatures. The heat, by the way, retrogrades back over the southwest. So if you got the hot ridge here, another one off here into the Atlantic, you get this channeling effect of tropical systems either up and down the eastern seaboard or into the western Gulf of Mexico. So that's the temperature story here into the early days of October. And this is good news, I guess. It's a double-edged sword, worsening dryness and drought, but harvest will pick up again over the upper Midwest and crop maturity too, and points on westward. Lots of moisture, maybe flooding Texas, the southwest with one tropical system here down through Florida, and there's another couple offshore with wet weather and the last of tropical systems making their way out of the northeast New England in that first week of October.
And as you look at the week of October 7th, Greg, does fall start to make an appearance across the country?
Not really. We build the heat ridge right back into position, a broad southwest to northeast upper level wind flow. So again, some dry time, crop, at least moisture reduction values will be better. Maturity rates, if you're still inclined to be monitoring that. And harvest operations look pretty good too with this particular setup. I know dryness and drought still ongoing. The tropics are busy again up and down the eastern seaboard. The southeast, perhaps parts of Texas, good news with moisture moisture in the Pacific Northwest and across the spring grain areas of the Dakotas and southern Canadian prairie.
Well, take us through October 20th. Greg, what do you see?
Temperature-wise, not bad. Normal, average, typical. Maybe a little frost and freeze into the upper Midwest, no big deal. Warmth here and over the western reaches of the country. Still have this trough over the middle part of the country, and so a little more propensity for wetter weather into the eastern Corn Belt, the southeastern states. Tropics are still busy down through Florida. Normal to below on precip from the plains on westward.
The Farm Progress Roundup is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of versatile high-speed discs and achieve better results with every pass. Visit Brandt.ca for more. It's time to check in with our Farm Progress colleagues around the country, and this week we're chatting with Lainey Beetsma. She's a regional sales manager, lives in Chillicothe, Missouri, where she farms with her family. Lainey, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me again, Mike. Glad to be back on This Week in Agribusiness.
Thanks for making the time. I understand things are busy on the Beetsma operation. Lainey, harvest is underway?
It is underway. They've been going strong for about a week now, picking corn, putting in some long hours. I know on our end can start because things have been dry, haven't had a lot of moisture in the last couple weeks, and so able to push through long hours in that corn harvest.
Now, Missouri, I know variable corn yields across the state, but that northern portion, I understand, Lainey, looks pretty good. Are you finding pretty strong yields as you guys get out there, or neighbors?
We really are. In northern Missouri, yields have been good for corn this year. It's fairly widespread, so there are, of course, some outliers to that, as always, but there's been some need to dry down the grain, also some need for elevators for some more space. So some of those elevators are filling up already, or they're only taking grain that's already dry.
Those are the challenges that come with a big harvest, though it's probably still welcomed by those growers in that neck of the woods, Lainey. And of course, beyond harvest, you have been busy with Farm Progress work, recently home from Husker Harvest Days in Grand Island. What were some of the highlights of Grand Island for you this year?
It was a great year at Husker Harvest Days. The weather was beautiful. We were very blessed with some sunny skies and dry conditions. Also, harvest hadn't started quite yet in Grand Island, so we got a big group of farmers to come and watch all those demos in the field and check out really what is the best showcase in agriculture in that area. More than 550 exhibitors, tons of attendees, lots of excitement about the agriculture industry, and really seeing what's best out there as far as brands, new ideas, technology, just such a great showcase.
It really was. It was a great chance for me to see what is happening in both the cattle and the irrigation side and to check with growers in a different part of the country. Lainey, of course, you're gearing up for the next big Farm Progress event, which, as I understand it, is the Organic Growers Summit in Monterey. When does that happen?
That happens December 4th and 5th, as you mentioned, in Monterey, California. And it is where organic farmers and also the suppliers come together for an educational conference. So this summit is an annual event that always takes place in Monterey, and looking forward to connecting people through workshops and different seminars to see what's the latest and greatest in the organic side. So staying on top of that market and serving those farmers.
Absolutely. Cover all facets of agriculture. Lainey Beetsma, Regional Sales Manager with Farm Progress. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks, Mike.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. We get the question from time to time, what's your favorite model of tractor in that tractor line, Max? Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, we all have our favorite tractors for sure, and everybody knows I'm a little bit partial to the red, so I love the Super H and the Farmall Super M since we have those. I love the 806 and the 1206. We don't have those. I helped a farmer one summer with his JI Case 930, so that's always been a favorite tractor of mine. And what about John Deere tractors? Well, I'm anything but an expert there, but I have friends who love the 4850, the 4430, the John Deere 4020, certainly, by all means, still very popular today. How about the John Deere 830, the 830 diesel in this case? This tractor belongs to Amy Jacobs. She's at Erie, Illinois. They're not far from the Mississippi River. And this was her grandmother's tractor, entrusted to Amy for her care going forward. Some of you might have seen it working, performing light duty at the Geneseo, Illinois Tractor Show a few days ago as she was handling dust control. Amy Jacobs and her 1958 John Deere 830 diesel. Mark Stonk is here, as he is every weekend, with a report from Big Iron Auctions. Mark?
Well, hello, Max. We've got a big week of auctions next week. We start off with a retirement sale in Mitchell, South Dakota for Dick and Pat Collins. And then on Wednesday, September the 25th, we'll have a retirement sale for Jerry Klein out of Udall, Kansas. We'll also be selling over 2,160 items with locations all across the Midwest. Some of the sellers include RDO Equipment Company with late model combine selling 2023 John Deere S780 machines. Also 2023 John Deere 616R self-propelled sprayer. They have late model 36-row 20-inch planters, corn heads, and draper heads selling on this sale. Also, Nebraska Harvest Center out of Kearney and Ogallala, Nebraska will sell late model Klaus combines. It's also a big week for land auctions. On Tuesday, September the 24th, 79 acres of McDonough County, Illinois land will sell. 152 acres of Boone County, Nebraska land will sell. 560 acres of Red Willow County, Nebraska ranch land will sell, as will 590 acres of Cumming County, Nebraska land sell in 4 different tracts. Check out Big Iron and Sullivan Auctioneers for all of the machinery and real estate land auctions taking place next week.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. And now we're going to meet that new generation of ag leader in Kentucky. Joining me this week is Ty Elrod. He serves as the Kentucky FFA Purchase Region State Vice President. And Ty, thanks for talking with us this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're from Benton County, Kentucky. Tell us a little bit about the agriculture of Benton County.
Yeah, so here in Benton, we have a whole lot of beef cattle because that's just what everybody's gotten into. And being on the western end of the state, we kind of have a little more flat land. So we've got a whole lot of row crop here as well.
So now that beef cattle side, I understand you've gotten into the beef cattle business through your time in FFA. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Of course. So when I was growing up, my grandfather always had some beef cattle out in the pasture, just some mama calf pairs. And when I got into my freshman year of high school, I decided that that was something that I wanted to get into. So I started a partnership with him, and we started raising calves on feed and selling them. And that has grown to today. We continue to raise calves on feed, and then we take them to the local processing plant and then sell the beef to some local restaurants and individuals in the area.
All right, direct to consumer. Love to see that kind of innovation in the market. Let's talk a little bit about your role as Vice President. What are you excited about over this next year, Ty?
I'm very excited to be able to go across the state and meet all the different FFA members across Kentucky. That's one of the things that I loved, was seeing some of these state officers come back to these chapters and give workshops and give insight. So I'm really looking forward to being able to do that.
That's right. Got to get that next generation raised up, right? Looking out longer term, Ty, your future plans. Do you hope to stay in the ag industry?
Yes, I would love to stay in some sort of the ag industry. I'm looking at maybe some seed selling positions, and overall the long-term goal is to be able to come back and farm full-time here on my family farm.
Well, we wish you the best of luck going forward, Ty. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Yes, thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by PTX, a new brand from AGCO that includes precision ag technologies from Precision Planting and PTX Trimble. Chad Colby at a farm show is a sight to see. The man is a tech enthusiast, and he's always spotting that next improvement that could make life better for growers. He spotted this at Farm Progress Show.
Everybody's looking at new ways to utilize some automation and some technology. Doug, talk a little bit about your system and how you've kind of worked on this over the last few years to help farmers not only keep records of their chemical application, but also obviously the mixing process.
Absolutely. So a lot of people are looking for efficiency in their sprayers. Maybe they're not looking to buy a new sprayer, but they got to get more done because farms are growing. And the big thing you can do to make a sprayer efficient is load it quickly.
If guys haven't seen this before, essentially you're using weight. That's how you're doing it. So let's talk a little bit physically about how it works.
Sure. So our inductor measures by weight. So we measure our dry flowable products and jugs through the inductor. And we've got a couple processes so you can handle a lot of dry. So ammonium sulfate is very popular. It's a good water conditioner. We can handle that. You can just dump bags in and go, but it'll weigh your odd amounts as well.
So Doug, you're holding it in your hand. The one thing that you did along with the mechanical side is the automation with the tablet. Right. So fellas can easily keep track of records, get everything all ready to go before they go to the field. Talk about how the implementation of that has really enhanced the product.
Yeah, so this data is captured, it's connected to our cloud service. We're just starting to do API connections into other systems, which is huge for ag retail because they have that work order management. But ultimately what we're looking for is you take a loading event, you know what's been used, that comes out of your inventory, your as-applied record is merged with the loading event, and it loops all the way back to your field management and accounting software. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Well, Doug, I always love seeing this automation because, like many people, I get caught in a sprayer in the spring, and there's nothing better than really good, accurate mixing and a great way to keep track of the data.
It makes it a lot more fun.
That's right. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. And folks, stay with us. Before we go, we're going to take a look at Iowa's corn crop and how it's developing ahead of harvest. Well, now it's time to go between the rows with our friends from Pioneer. This week, we're talking with Matt Vandahar. He's outstanding in his field in Central Iowa. He's a Pioneer agronomist. Matt, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you.
How's this corn crop looking as we get close to harvest across Central Iowa?
Well, here in Central Iowa, we've been through some droughty years. And so this year with a little more rainfall, we've got actually some healthy looking corn through the finish line here. So certainly some stresses that happened this year, but a little more optimism as far as this crop's doing currently.
For Central Iowa farmers, Matt, how big of a concern is corn rootworm?
Yeah, we had a mild winter this past year, so populations continue to be a problem in certain areas and certain long-term corn-on-corn rotations. So it's something that we continue to address, and we continue to address in years where we have high populations like this year.
And I know that Pioneer is always looking to address those challenges growers are finding in their fields. You've got new tools and solutions. Matt, talk about what's coming next year for those growers.
Yeah, so Pioneer's Vorseed Enlist technology, the biggest thing is it offers protection. We've got a new mode of action protection below ground. It's RNAi technology. It gives you 3 modes of action below ground, and we happen to have 3 modes of action above ground too. But as we fight these long-term corn-on-corn fields with these big populations, having that extra protection is great, and it comes with yield too, and that's the biggest thing. Is we want yield with that protection. Something we can offer here with the Vorseed Enlist.
Well, let's talk about Vorseed Enlist bringing that yield protection, but also to weed resistance. So what kind of advantages are you seeing there for your growers?
Yeah, so it adds another layer of flexibility. So instead of just the 2 modes of action of glufosinate, glyphosate, now we add Enlist 2,4-D choline as another mode of action, as well as FOP technology. So we've got 4 modes of action. So we're not telling you to go out there and spray every field with Enlist as your main mode of action. It's another tool, another option we have for some of that late season, big broadleaf concern we've had with water hemp over the years.
I gotcha, Matt. With all that being said, as you look out to this next growing season, what fields make the most sense for that Vorseed Enlist?
Yeah, as we roll this out, it's going to cover any acre, but we're going to focus some of the initial volumes on that long-term corn-on-corn. If you had any issues with populations, if you're trying to manage your tactics against, those big populations of corn rootworms, it gives you another mode of action below ground. So that's where we're going to focus it. It goes along with our current chrome lineup as far as just another thing in the lineup to give you better protection, but also some yield too.
Now, Matt, of course, combines haven't rolled yet. We don't really have a good hint on yield, but what have you noticed this growing season for those with Vorceed Enlist?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing is the lack of beetles out there. Just, when you get into big population of corn rootworm beetles, you have them flying around. Yes, they've gotten through some of the trade and the management tactics, but here with Vorceed Enlist, we just seem to be calmer out there. Less beetles flying around, a lot more protection against that pest. Just reduction in the adults is probably the biggest thing we've noticed here prior to getting to harvest here.
All right, Matt. Well, prior to harvest, it's coming up. It's just around the corner. Anything we ought to be doing right now to maximize that last little bit of yield?
Yeah, there's nothing we can go out there and do besides scout. We want to at least go and look for stock quality issues. In my area, we've had a lot of nitrogen deficiency issues. And so if we can go identify those issues, those soil types, maybe help our plan for next time it's corn, look at some of the insect pressure we might have had or any late season disease. We've had some tar spot and southern rust pop up. Let's identify those problems, see how we can adjust next time we have corn out here as far as our management practice. Matt
Vandehar, Pioneer Field Agronomist, thank you so much for filling us in on what's happening between the rows.
Thank you.
Well, next week we will have more clarity on the yields coming out of these corn and soybean fields across the country as those combines do continue to roll. And we'll be back next week with that insight right here. Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.